My girlfriend once said she only liked poor guys. So as a second-generation rich kid, I started living frugally, eating instant ramen and pickled cucumbers every day, fearing that if my real identity were ever exposed, she would leave me. I carefully tested her attitude. "If one day you find out that I suddenly became rich, what would you do?" I asked casually. She patted my shoulder, smiling gently. "Don't overthink it. Relax. Even if you stay poor forever, I'll still like you." Hearing this, I forced a smile. Deep down, I felt relieved, almost. Before meeting Emily, I had never thought much about money. It was just there. I had never had to budget, never had to choose between eating out or saving for rent. If I wanted something, I bought it. Simple as that. But Emily was different. She grew up in a working-class family, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs just to make ends meet. She didn't trust wealth, didn't believe in privilege. To her, money changed people, made them arrogant, selfish, disconnected from reality. Rich guys, she once told me, only cared about status and appearances. They didn't know what it meant to struggle, to work for something real. I remembered the way her eyes lit up when she talked about men who had pulled themselves up from nothing, who had fought against the odds and won. Guys like me? I was exactly the kind of person she despised. So I did what any irrational man in love would do. I pretended to be broke. It wasn't easy. For the first time in my life, I had to actually think before spending money. No more expensive takeout or high-end coffee shops. I forced myself to eat cheap, flavorless meals, convincing Emily that I was barely scraping by. "I don't mind," she said once when I apologized for taking her to a tiny diner instead of a proper restaurant. "It's the company that matters, not the place." I smiled, pretending not to notice the way she glanced longingly at the steak someone was eating at the next table. Even my wardrobe had to change. My usual designer outfits were packed away, replaced with faded jeans and thrift store hoodies. I deliberately let my sneakers get scuffed, making sure I looked like a guy who had seen hard times. I told Emily I was a struggling college student, working multiple part-time jobs to afford tuition. In reality, my father's money had already paid for my degree in full. But she didn't need to know that. At first, it felt like an adventure, like playing a role in some elaborate performance. But the longer I kept up the act, the harder it became to ignore the guilt creeping in. Emily was so proud of me. "You're one of the hardest working people I know," she told me one night, her voice filled with admiration. "You don't take anything for granted. That's why I like you." I wanted to tell her the truth, to confess that everything she believed about me was a lie. But then she kissed me, and I swallowed the words before they could escape. I had already gone too far. Living as a broke college student wasn't as easy as I thought. I swapped my usual tailored suits for cheap t-shirts bought in bulk. My designer sneakers were stuffed into the back of my closet, replaced by a pair of worn-out shoes I picked up at a thrift store. They weren't even the right size, and within a week, I had blisters on both feet. Worse than that was the food. Gone were the days of perfectly cooked steaks, fresh seafood, and Michelin-starred dining. Instead, I lived on instant ramen, canned soup, and the occasional fast food dollar menu item. I told myself it was part of the experience, that I was committing to the role. But God, I missed real food. One evening, Emily and I walked past a steakhouse downtown. The smell of grilled meat and melted butter filled the air. My stomach growled so loudly that Emily laughed. "Someday when you make it big, you can take me here," she said, smiling up at me. I forced a grin. Yeah, someday. If only she knew that I could take her there right now. I could buy the entire restaurant if I wanted to. But instead, I just tightened my grip on her hand and kept walking. Of course, to fully sell the act, I had to get a job. "Food delivery sounds about right," I muttered to myself as I scrolled through job listings one night. It was simple, flexible, and most importantly, it looked convincing. Emily was thrilled when I told her. "You're really working hard," she said, squeezing my hand. "A lot of guys wouldn't put in this much effort." I smiled, ignoring the guilt gnawing at my chest. She had no idea that I didn't need this job, that I could quit any time and still have more money than I'd ever know what to do with. But I had gone too far to back out now. My first night on the job, I delivered takeout to a luxury apartment complex, one of the same buildings my father owned. As I handed over the food, I prayed the doorman wouldn't recognize me. "New job, kid?" he asked, squinting at me. Yeah," I mumbled, ducking my head. He chuckled. "Good for you. Gotta start somewhere." I forced a laugh and hurried out before he could ask any more questions. One afternoon, after finishing a delivery shift, I met up with Emily at a small cafe near campus. She ordered an iced coffee, while I, out of habit, almost ordered my usual cappuccino with extra foam. But then I stopped myself. Black coffee. Cheapest thing on the menu. As I took a sip, I caught Emily watching me with admiration. "You never complain," she said. "Even when things are tough, you just push through." I forced a laugh. If only she knew. I never thought my carefully crafted lie would come crashing down in a high-end boutique. It was just another afternoon. I had just finished a food delivery shift and decided to take a shortcut through downtown when I saw Emily standing inside a luxury store, holding an expensive handbag. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. Emily? In a place like this? I knew she didn't care about material things. She always talked about how she preferred simple, meaningful gifts over designer brands. But there she was, running her fingers over the smooth leather of a bag that probably cost more than what I had pretended to earn in a month. I hesitated at the entrance. I should have turned around, walked away, acted like I never saw her. But before I could move, fate decided to screw me over. "Sweetheart," my blood ran cold. Margaret Carter, my mother, walked out from behind a display, smiling as she carried several shopping bags filled with high-end clothes. She was as elegant as ever, dressed in a tailored dress and heels that cost more than a semester's tuition, and she was heading straight toward Emily. I nearly tripped over my own feet rushing inside. Emily blinked in surprise as she saw me. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" My mother turned and beamed at me. "Oh, Ethan, perfect timing. I was just about to check out, but I think I'll grab a few more things for you while I'm here. You can't keep wearing those awful shirts, darling." My stomach twisted. I glanced at Emily, who looked absolutely stunned. Panic surged through me. I needed to say something. Anything. Mom, Margaret turned to Emily with a warm smile. "And you must be Emily. Ethan's told me all about you." Emily managed a polite smile. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Carter. Please, call me Margaret." My mother gestured around the store, completely oblivious to the fact that she was seconds away from ruining my entire life. "You have great taste, dear. I just adore this place. Our family shops here all the time." My throat went dry. Emily's grip on the handbag tightened ever so slightly. I saw the brief flicker of confusion in her eyes. I had to fix this. Fast. I let out a forced chuckle. "Oh yeah, my mom is, a personal shopper." Margaret frowned. "Excuse me?" I turned to Emily, ignoring the way my mother was staring at me like I had lost my mind. "She works for a really wealthy client," I lied, forcing the words out before I could stop myself. "They send her here to pick out luxury items for them." Emily's expression cleared immediately. "Oh, that makes sense." She let out a relieved breath. For a second I thought, never mind. She smiled. "That's actually really cool, Mrs. Carter. I didn't know you did that kind of work." Margaret opened her mouth, but I shot her a desperate look. "Please, just go with it." To her credit, she didn't question me right away. Instead, she gave Emily a strained smile. "Well, I do have an eye for fashion," she said, clearly confused but playing along, for now. Emily nodded approvingly. "I love that. It must be fun picking out things for rich people, even if you don't get to keep them." I nearly choked. Margaret looked absolutely horrified, But before she could correct anything, I grabbed Emily's hand. Hey, didn't you say you had to get to work soon? We should probably go. Emily checked her phone. Oh, you're right, I sighed in relief. Well, it was great meeting you, Mrs. Carter, Emily said sweetly. Don't work too hard, okay? Margaret blinked. Right, of course. I practically dragged Emily out of the store before my mother could say another word. Once we were outside, she gave me an apologetic smile. Sorry if I made things awkward. I know it must be tough sometimes seeing all those rich people buying stuff like it's nothing. I swallowed hard. She thought I was jealous of the wealthy customers. If only she knew. Yeah, I said, forcing a laugh. It's tough. Emily squeezed my hand. Don't worry, I won't judge you for being poor. I nearly tripped over my own feet. Of all the things she could have said, that was the one that hit me the hardest. Because it was the one thing that wasn't true. And yet, I nodded. Thanks, Em. As we walked away, I risked a glance back at the store. Through the glass window, I saw my mother still standing there, looking utterly bewildered. I had some explaining to do. Keeping up the act was getting harder. After the incident at the luxury store, I thought I had dodged a bullet. But Emily had a sharp mind, and once a seed of doubt was planted, it didn't take long for it to grow. The first sign came when we were studying together at the campus library. Emily had forgotten her pen, so I absent-mindedly handed her mine without thinking. She turned it over in her fingers, her brows furrowing slightly. Wow, this is really nice. I looked up from my notebook and instantly felt my stomach drop. The pen she was holding? A Mont Blanc Meisterstück, handcrafted, gold-trimmed, and worth more than the monthly rent of the apartment I was pretending to struggle to afford. Shit. She traced a finger along the engraved details, then looked at me, eyes filled with curiosity. Where did you get this? I had to think fast. I cleared my throat, forcing a sheepish chuckle. It was a gift. For my professor. Emily raised an eyebrow. A professor gave you this? I nodded, keeping my face as neutral as possible. Yeah, for being a great student or whatever. Technically, it wasn't a total lie. A professor had once praised me in class. He just didn't happen to buy me a luxury pen afterward. Emily turned it over in her hands again, and for a moment I thought she wasn't going to let it go. But then she smiled and handed it back. That's pretty cool. I didn't know professors gave gifts like that. I forced out a laugh. Yeah, well, guess I got lucky. She nodded, but something in her expression had changed. She didn't push the subject, but the doubt was there. I could see it. A few days later, I caught her watching me closely. When I bought coffee, she noticed I instinctively reached for my black card before quickly switching to cash. When I helped her fix her laptop, she seemed surprised that I knew so much about high-end tech. When we passed by a car dealership, I knew better than to look too interested, but she caught me staring a second too long at a sleek black Mercedes in the showroom. Little things. Small details I hadn't paid attention to before, and Emily was picking up on all of them. One night, as we walked back to her apartment, she spoke up. Ethan, can I ask you something? I felt my pulse spike, but I kept my voice steady. Of course. She hesitated for a second before saying, I know you don't like talking about money, but have you ever been rich? The question hit me harder than I expected. I forced a laugh. Me? Rich, Emily, I can barely afford groceries. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Yeah, I guess you're right, she said softly. Just forget I asked. She didn't bring it up again after that. But I could tell she hadn't forgotten. I had been careful. Every move I made, every word I spoke, I made sure it fit the image of a broke college student scraping by. But no matter how careful I was, fate always had a way of messing with me. This time it came in the form of a sleek black Mercedes. It wasn't even mine. Well, technically it was. But I hadn't been driving it. I had just dropped by my father's office for a quick errand, something about signing paperwork for an investment under my name. It was supposed to be in and out, no risks. But just as I stepped out of the car, feeling relieved that I had managed to keep my double life intact for another day, I heard Emily's voice. "Ethan?" My stomach twisted. I turned slowly, praying I had misheard, but there she was, standing across the street, holding a grocery bag, staring at me like she had just seen a ghost. I had about 2 seconds to come up with a story before she walked over. "You were in that car?" she asked, her tone careful, almost too neutral. I glanced at the Mercedes behind me and forced a nervous chuckle. "Oh, yeah, I just finished a shift." Her brows furrowed. "A shift?" I nodded quickly. "Yeah, part-time work." She tilted her head, looking from me to the car. "Wait, are you saying you're a chauffeur?" I latched onto the excuse like a lifeline. "Exactly," I said, a little too enthusiastically. "Just helping out a client. Good pay, flexible hours." Emily's eyes flickered with something unreadable. I held my breath, waiting. Then, slowly, she smiled. "That actually makes sense," she said. I exhaled discreetly. She ran a hand through her hair, still looking at the car. "I guess I just wasn't expecting it. You never mentioned it before." I shrugged, trying to keep casual. "Didn't think it was a big deal." She nodded, still deep in thought. Then, looking back at me, she said softly, "Ethan, whether you're rich or poor doesn't matter to me. I just want honesty." I froze. For a second, I thought she knew, that she had figured everything out and was giving me a chance to come clean. But then she reached for my hand, her fingers warm against mine. "I trust you," she said. The guilt in my chest was unbearable. But I still smiled. "Of course," I lied. "Lies have a way of catching up with you." I had spent months carefully crafting my story, making sure every detail aligned, every excuse sounded believable. I had convinced Emily, convinced myself, that I could keep this going forever. But all it took was one careless mistake, one sentence, one person, and everything fell apart. It happened at a family gathering. Emily had never met my extended family before, but when my mother invited me to a small get-together at our estate, she insisted I bring her along. I hesitated. Every fiber of my being told me this was a terrible idea, but saying no would have raised questions. So I agreed, convincing myself that I could manage the situation. Big mistake. The moment we arrived, I knew I was in trouble. The Carter estate was nothing short of a mansion. Massive gates, a long driveway, luxury cars lined up outside. I had prepared a weak excuse about how my wealthy relatives like to host extravagant parties, but I could already feel Emily's confusion as she took it all in. Then came the final blow. "Ethan, man, long time no see." I turned just in time to see Ryan Blackwood, a childhood friend of mine, grinning as he walked over. Ryan, like me, had grown up surrounded by wealth. Unlike me, he had no reason to hide it. Emily stood beside me, smiling politely. Ryan clapped me on the back. "I can't believe you're finally introducing your girlfriend to the family." "So, how long have you two been dating?" "Almost a year," Emily answered. Ryan let out a whistle. "Damn, and she still doesn't know." My heart stopped. Emily blinked. "Know what?" Ryan laughed, completely oblivious to the fact that he had just destroyed my entire life. "That Ethan here is basically a billionaire's kid. Didn't he tell you? The Carter family owns half the real estate in the city." Silence. Emily slowly turned to me, her expression unreadable. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat had gone dry. Ryan, finally sensing the tension, frowned. "Wait, you did tell her, right?" Emily's voice was eerily calm. "No, he didn't." Ryan's eyes widened. "Oh, shit." I swallowed hard. "Emily, She held up a hand. "Don't." Her voice trembled, and that scared me more than anything. She wasn't just angry, she was hurt. "You lied to me," she whispered. "This whole time?" "Emily, I can explain." She let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. "Explain what, Ethan? That everything I thought I knew about you was fake? That all those times you struggled, all those times I admired you for working hard, you were just playing a role?" "It wasn't like that," I said quickly. I didn't want to lose you." Tears welled in her eyes. So you thought lying to me was the answer? I had no response to that. For months I had convinced myself that this was harmless, that as long as I loved her, as long as I treated her well, the truth didn't matter. But it did. It mattered to her, and I had broken something between us that I wasn't sure I could fix. Emily stepped back, wiping her eyes. I can't do this, Ethan. I reached for her hand. Emily. Please, she pulled away, and then she turned and walked out the door, leaving me standing there, watching her go, knowing I had just lost the one person who had ever loved me for who she thought I was. Emily was gone, and this time I didn't know if she was coming back. I called. No answer. I texted. Nothing. I even went to her apartment once, but the lights were off, and I knew better than to push my luck. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to truly lose control. Money couldn't fix this. No amount of apologies, grand gestures, or perfectly crafted excuses could undo the damage I had caused. I had lied to her. Not just once, not just a little. I had built an entire relationship on deception, and now the weight of it was suffocating me. Emily, on the other hand, was drowning in her own storm of emotions. She stayed in her room for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment we had shared, every conversation, every look, every promise. Had it all been a lie? The Ethan she knew, the one she fell for, was hardworking, humble, driven. A man who had struggled but never let it break him. A man she admired. But that Ethan didn't exist. So who had she been in love with? The real Ethan Carter, or the version of him that he had carefully crafted just for her? She hated how much it hurt. Hated that despite everything, she still missed me. That she still loved me. But could she ever trust me again? Days passed. Then a week. I stopped calling after the 10th unanswered attempt. Stopped texting after the 20th. It was the longest I had gone without hearing from her since we started dating, and the silence was unbearable. I went through the motions, woke up, went to class, worked shifts I no longer needed just to keep myself busy. But none of it felt real. Nothing did. Because for the first time in my life, I realized that all the wealth in the world meant nothing if I didn't have her. And I had no idea if I had lost her forever. I hadn't texted Emily in days, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew that no matter what I said, she wasn't ready to hear it. For the first time in a long while, I had no idea what to do. I wanted to explain, to fix things, to somehow make her understand that I never meant to hurt her. But every time I picked up my phone, my fingers hovered over the screen, unable to type a single word. What could I even say? That I was sorry? That I regretted lying? That I wished I had told her the truth from the start? She already knew all that. It wouldn't change anything. So I did nothing. And in doing nothing, I realized just how much space she had taken up in my life. Everything felt off. I was used to waking up to her good morning texts, used to walking home from class and calling her just to talk about nothing. I was used to the way she'd laugh at my stupid jokes, the way she'd scold me for not eating properly, the way she always looked at me like I was someone worth believing in. And now? Nothing. She was gone, and I had no one to blame but myself. I don't know what Emily was thinking. I don't know if she was still angry, if she missed me, or if she had already decided to move on. All I knew was that she hadn't blocked me. And as pathetic as it sounded, that tiny fact was the only thing keeping me from losing hope completely. I wasn't expecting to see her again. Not so soon. Maybe not ever. So when I opened my door and found Emily standing there, I just froze. She looked different. Not angry, not hurt, just tired. Like she had been thinking too much, feeling too much, and was finally done carrying it all by herself. Neither of us spoke at first. Then, after what felt like forever, she took a breath and said, "It doesn't matter how much money you have. What matters is if we're honest with each other." I almost didn't believe I had heard her right. For days I had imagined this moment. I had run through 100 different scenarios in my head, her yelling at me, telling me she never wanted to see me again, pretending I didn't exist. But this I hadn't dared to hope for. "Emily," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head. "I'm not saying what you did was okay." I swallowed hard. "I know. I'm not saying I can forget it overnight. I wouldn't expect you to." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time in weeks I saw something in her eyes that I thought I had lost forever. "Trust. She exhaled. "I don't want to walk away from this, from us." My chest tightened. "Emily," I said, taking a step closer. "No more lies, no more pretending." A pause. Then with a steady voice I promised, "Never again." She didn't say anything at first, but when she finally reached for my hand, fingers curling around mine like they belonged there, I knew I had been given a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. Starting over wasn't easy. There were still moments of hesitation, moments where Emily would look at me like she was searching for something, some sign that I was still hiding a part of myself. And maybe, in a way, I was. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I was still figuring out who I really was without the act. For so long, I had pretended to be someone else, thinking that was the only way to be worthy of her. Now, for the first time, I was just me. And somehow, that was enough. We took things slow. No grand gestures, no expensive gifts, just time. Time to talk, to laugh, to rebuild what I had broken. Emily changed too. She no longer flinched when we walked past high-end stores. She stopped making comments about rich people being shallow or out of touch. It wasn't that she suddenly embraced wealth. It was that she realized money didn't define a person's worth. I didn't stop being rich, but I did stop pretending it didn't matter. I still lived simply, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because I had learned that the best things in life weren't things at all. One evening, as we walked through the park, she slipped her hand into mine, fingers lacing together like they always belonged there. I looked at her, and she smiled. The kind of smile that made me believe in fresh starts, in second chances, in us. We didn't need promises of forever. We just needed this, a new beginning, together. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future content.